You're listening to Chillworthy,
a podcast where two best friends discuss mysteries, murders, and anything in between for your enjoyment.
So if you're ready to hear some chilling and unsettling cases, you're in the right place. Happy listening. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Chillworthy with Brent and Talia.
Hello, everybody.
So I have some things to say. You have some things to say. Who wants to start our things to say?
You go first.
All right. My things to say are the following. I have finished 2 books since we last spoke. So last I told you, I was reading Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman.
Sounded terrifying from your description.
So with that, it was the story about, I think she was 8 years old and she lived in a house that had this entity in it called the Other Mommy.
Yeah.
And it had like Coraline vibes, but a little bit more adult, I guess. Well, definitely a little bit more adult. And so I finished that. I thought that was a good read. I would give it, 4 stars.
4 stars.
I would say 4. I mean, but 4 cusping on 3.5, not cusping on 5.
Important to note.
Right. And then the other book I just finished was We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clear. Something. I want to say he's Canadian.
What was it about?
So this book is very psychological, and you think it's going one way and then it kind of turns into something else. So basically the short version is that this lesbian couple who they're like house flippers. They move into a house.
Doom and gloom.
It's just a normal house, I guess, but I think it's in Canada, and it's kind of like a little isolated and whatever. And so they're like flipping the house, and one of them goes into town to go get something, and she's gone for like most of the day. And the other one is at home, and there's a knock on the door.
Oh boy. And
but
she's
what
by
else
herself.
what else would you like to happen at a door? I mean,
fine. But you're saying, it's kind of a deserted setting, pretty desolate.
Right.
Who the hell is knocking?
So it's this family.
Oh, great.
So it's a dad, a mom, and 3 kids. And basically the dad is like, hey, sorry to bother you. I know this is random, but we used to live here. Or no, I used to live here when I was little. Oh. And we're in the process of moving across country. We were passing the area, and I wanted to know if I could give my wife and kids a tour of your house.
2 or 3.
So that's kind of what the premise of the story is.
Let's stop right there. If you lived in an extremely isolated setting and this situation happened, what would you say to this family?
I don't think I would like the concept of it. I don't think I would allow it to happen. However, and this gives literally nothing away, but she is a people pleaser. And I feel like I fall into that category of she was like, when she had the normal reaction anybody would, like, there are these strangers who want to come in. I don't really want them to, but I also don't want to be rude. Like, that was part of her inner dialogue as this started up. So
and on one hand, I'm thinking, this gives me a safer feeling vibe that it's this family with kids and not just this man who shows up alone. But then it's also like, you don't know what these people are up to. There are way more of them than you, and you're by yourself. You're not going to be yelling for anybody.
She does have a dog.
Oh.
So.
There's the dog.
So anyway, that is the premise of what the book is without giving anything away. And like I said, even from that description, it sounds like the book is going somewhere that it kind of isn't, but it was a good book. A lot of people on TikTok were saying it was one of the scariest books they read this year.
Ugh.
But I think it's scary, for reasons other than what we actually might think.
Right. I mean, if people are saying that they think it's the most scary, that makes me terrified to read it. But how you've described it so far sounds really good. And also the part how you said you think it's going in one direction, but it actually goes in another. I love when that happens. Like when you think you're solid about what's happening in this
You
book.
like to be wrong.
Exactly. So I think I'm going to try it. I like to... Now, season-wise, what would you say? Because I was going to say I like to read things. I hope to read them in the month that they're supposed to be happening in. So is this like a fall book?
I would say it's winter.
Okay.
Because a winter storm does come through at one point.
All right.
So, yeah, it's
Good.
definitely like gives cold vibes.
Okay. I'll add it to the winter list. Thank you.
And the only other thing I have to report on is that last night I went to the Pentatonics concert.
Right.
Which they were fantastic.
Good.
And David Archuleta opened for them. Absolutely adorable.
As I said earlier to you before we started, I had no idea who that was, but I have since done my homework, and he does look like a little peach.
Absolutely. And sang Espresso, which I am absolutely just... That song has like a throat grip on me. What is that called?
No idea.
All right. I don't know
sure
if it's a throat grip, but... Stranglehold?
Maybe.
We'll say that. But anyway, if David is listening and perhaps he is a chiller, I'm available.
Well, you heard it here and now.
You heard it here first, everyone.
David, please comment.
Now, what is it that you have to say?
So to start with, I was sick recently, so my voice is not normal sounding. So just putting that out there, and I may be coughing a little bit in this episode, so I apologize in advance.
She's got the rasp.
That's also why I'm trying to laugh minimally or laugh softly, so it doesn't get the cough going, but
Right.
I'm sure it will be at some point. So all I have is many book updates. Now, I believe I said in the last episode that I had started Jurassic Park, or I wanted to start it.
Yeah, you started it.
Okay. So I finished it.
Oh.
Oh, my. I don't know what to say. Of course, it's going to have way more information, or I should say content, than the movie, like every other book turned into a movie has. But there were and also you have to assume that a lot of details are going to be different, that they're going to change things.
Right.
Well, this was a wild ride. There were a lot of things that I just really didn't care for in it. You know, obviously a lot of the like action scenes were different, but some of them were extremely different. Like, if you don't want me to spoil anything, stop listening now. But
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, this has been out since the 90s, so I think...
book and movie.
Right.
Right. But like,
I was going to say, spoiler alert, does the perk get out of control?
it does. And like the dinosaurs.
Could you imagine if that didn't happen in the book?
Well, I know. I mean...
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, totally fine. The dinosaurs get off the island, so there's that part. They're, of course, breeding on their own, which also happens in the movie, but to a way larger extent in the book.
Life finds a way.
Absolutely. The parts, you know how much I love Malcolm, but the parts where he's trying to explain chaos theory and explain like why he thinks things are the way they are, you get a little in the weeds, but I mean, that is how he is. Almost everybody dies. Lex and Timmy are not... like in the book, Timmy is older than Lex, and Lex is really young, like younger than I think Timmy probably was in the movie. These things obviously aren't huge deals, but
So wait, she's the one that gets shocked?
that isn't even in it.
Oh.
Never even happens. Excellent question. Yep, doesn't
Thank
happen.
you.
She is not the computer one. Timmy isn't either, but he's the one who basically like figures things out on the computer. So, and honestly, I didn't really care for the writing either. So I'm not going to go into every single like action packed event that happens in the book, but there were way more than the movie. The ones in the movie, a lot of them were just completely created for the movie. Clearly, that T-Rex scene in the beginning, you know, near there where when the fence goes down.
I certainly do.
Right. That isn't the same. Gennaro makes it through quite a bit of the book. So
was the goat involved?
The goat was involved.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Not like leg falling onto the
Fine.
roof, So
did they call the raptor a clever girl?
no, I was looking for that too. Nope.
All
There
right.
were a few quotes that stayed the same and I highlighted them, but I was like highlighting a ton of the differences that I was finding, and I don't know, it didn't pack the punch that I was hoping for. So
Yeah.
I gave it 3 stars. I'm so ashamed to say that, but it is what it is.
So, really quick before we move on, you're telling me that Dr. Sattler dies?
She lives.
Okay.
She
fine.
and Grant both live.
Fine.
The kids live. Malcolm, Hammond, Wu, Gennaro, Arnold, Nedry, obviously, all dead. So it's
Well,
just
that's not going to work out for the movies if Wu dies.
well, exactly.
Considering he's making all those extra monsters.
right, and which is consistent in the book. But I mean, and Wu dies a horrific death. Horrific. That's
All right. Well, 3 stars for Jurassic Park.
Right. I also started Home is Where the Bodies Are. I gave that 4 stars. So that's about 3 adult siblings. Mother is in hospice when the book starts. She passes away. She says something to the one daughter, kind of gets the daughter's wheels turning. Like, what are you talking about? The dad went missing several years ago, and I don't want to give too much away, and I don't remember how much was in the description of the book, but it was very good. Each chapter is a perspective of a sibling. It alternates.
Okay.
And they basically are going through everything in the house, deciding whether they want to sell the house or not. And they come across this videotape from the 90s. Based off what's on this videotape, they're like, oh my gosh, what is happening with our parents kind of thing, who are both now gone and not in the picture. And then they're just kind of figuring that out themselves now. So it's like a mystery.
But you're not done.
Oh, yeah, I am. I finished it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So how many stars?
I said 4.
Oh, yeah, you
Yes,
did. You did.
Yes. And I had mentioned Jackpot Summer.
Yes.
Okay. So finish that, obviously. I think I said that in one of our most recent episodes. And I really liked it, and I gave it 5 stars. Yeah, I gave it 5. So I found a book by the same author called The Last Summer at the Golden Hotel. Very similar, at least in the description, to like Dirty Dancing theme. Did you watch that movie? Did you like that movie?
No, I don't even think I watched it.
Okay. So the like camp sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
I do know what theme you mean.
Okay. So I was like, oh my gosh, that would be such a good summer book. So just finished that one the other day. Not a huge fan. I gave it 3. Did not nearly pack the same punch. Good writing still, but I just did not care for this one as much at all.
All right.
And lastly,
boy.
I know. I am
Boy, oh boy.
I'm in the middle of The Villa, and I love it. I don't honestly remember. I think I'm like approaching 50%, maybe a little bit more, but it alternates between the 70s and present day, and it's like involving this villa in Italy, and that's like a murder house, and I love it. I really love it.
All right, well, I was going to say please keep us posted, but I know you will.
I sure will.
All right.
All right.
Well, if everybody's still there, we're at about the 15-minute mark, and we are going to start today's episode. For real, for real. All right, so today's episode, as our normal disclaimer, internet's a crazy place. We're doing the best we can with the information we found. If we're wrong, we apologize.
Forgive us.
Yes, and collaboration is always welcomed. So, okay, so the case that we're going to be doing today is the disappearance of a man called Terrence Woods. I did the research on this case, and it's I don't know, it's a very like weird case. I don't know how else to say it. It's just very strange what happens here. But so a little bit of background on Terrence Woods. So Terrence Woods Jr., he was born in 1991 in Maryland, and he grew up there with a very close-knit family. So from a young age, Terrence was known for his like vibrant personality, and he was just very curious about the world around him. His family describes him as a kind-hearted, intelligent, and creative individual who had a strong passion for storytelling, which is important for what he ended up doing for his work, which was being a television producer. Terrence attended the American University in Washington, D.C., where he earned a degree in film production.
That's a really good school.
His education provided him with both the technical skills and creative insights necessary to thrive in this very competitive world of media production. After graduating, Terrence quickly makes a name for himself in the film and television industry, where he worked on various high-profile projects that were both like documentaries and reality TV shows. And he worked with some pretty big networks, and including like the Discovery Channel, which is when this incident happened.
That's a lot of success right out of school.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, clearly he was super talented, and that's, I mean, what a young age to already be doing all of this, you know?
Yes, I agree. And it's important to note for later in the story that he was very good at his job, and he came highly recommended by a bunch of people. This case was actually famous enough that it made it on the Dr. Phil show.
Oh, wow. Like his family went on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, but it is important to note that he was good at his job, and he always like went above and beyond. And some of the people I was listening to their interviews, some of his friends who worked with him on different projects said, like, you know, he was very like proactive. He was always like thinking a few steps ahead on what the production team would need and stuff like that. So he was just good at his job.
Yeah.
So a little bit about his, like, more of his personality. He was outgoing, empathetic, and sensitive, and he just had a way of connecting with people from all different walks of life, which made him not only a great colleague to have, but a beloved friend and family member. So there were some indications a little bit before this incident happened that Terrence might have been dealing with some personal challenges. Friends and family mentioned that in the months leading up to his disappearance, because he does disappear, Terrence exhibited signs of stress and fatigue, and he, I guess, reportedly had confided in some of his close friends and or associates that he was feeling overwhelmed and was considering wanting to take a break from work to focus on his well-being.
You know, when you think of what I was saying earlier, just how much success he had so fast and at such a young age, the pressure that he must have been feeling had to be very intense, I would think.
Well, and this is something, I'm trying to think how to say it. Like, because of the nature of the type of shows he was doing, he was in different terrain. Like, it wasn't
different parts of the world.
Right. It wasn't just a TV studio set.
Right.
I mean, it was like the Discovery Channel. I mean, you're out in various
climates.
Yes, like challenging places.
Yeah.
And obviously that's going to take a toll on somebody also, because it's tough conditions. So now we're getting, in this story, we're getting closer to basically like what the project was that was ended up being his last project ever, sadly. So he started working for the Discovery Channel, but it was also for Raw TV, RAW. And so, because I think it was like he had been based in London for a while, so he was working like with that television production company for the Discovery Channel. And this project was taking place in Idaho. So he was hired to be the production assistant for this documentary series for the Discovery Channel that was focusing on abandoned gold mines in these remote areas. And because of the fact that they were remote areas, you know, the crew was very isolated and the terrain was very rugged. The typical terrain we always talk about.
Right. Common theme.
Right. Very common. So for Terrence, this type of assignment was not entirely out of the ordinary, though, because he had previously worked on similar projects that demanded kind of this rough terrain adaptability.
And they were all together. Like, if there was a whole crew out there, it's not like he had to go himself. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So I feel like the fact that they were there all together, you would think meant safety, but apparently not.
Well, so speaking of that, including him, there were 12 crew members. So he had expressed some apprehension about this particular shoot. And I saw on the Dr. Phil interview that he actually had told his dad, his brother, and his cousin that he was feeling like uneasy about making this trip. But he didn't go into detail. But despite this, he did tell them that, he had already made a commitment to this job assignment, so he was going to do it anyway.
It's interesting when you think of how seasoned he was that something like this would throw him. I mean, I know nothing about Idaho or gold mines, and I don't know the conditions of getting in them, going down in them, what they look like, how hostile of an environment it is, and how dangerous. But it's interesting that for that, of all things, he would be telling multiple family members that he was really not feeling it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it had to do with the actual location or the topic or potentially the people.
Right, good
which
point.
We will get into in a second.
Yeah, like Idaho folk, you mean?
No, I mean like the documentary crew people. So this is in the fall of 2008 is when he becomes part of this production crew, and the show was titled Gold Rush, Dave Turin's Lost Mine. So this show, like I said, focused on exploring and I guess reviving abandoned gold mines in some of the most remote and challenging terrains in the United States. I have never heard of it before, but
I was about to say that I did. Like, I remember that show about a gold mine. But then when you said the rest of it, like the continuation of the title, then you lost me. But I feel like I do remember a gold mine show.
Are you talking about City Slickers?
I don't think.
All right.
Maybe.
So this episode was taking place in Idaho, specifically the Orogrande area within the Nez Perce Clearwater National Forest. Another national forest.
Which means danger.
Yes.
And you know it.
I do know it. So the project was very demanding, and it required long days of shooting in just treacherous environments. And as I said, the crew consisted of 12 professionals, including himself. So now we get to, he's arriving now in Idaho.
Can I ask something,
Yes.
please? Thank you. What month is this? And
September.
What is the weather in Idaho in September?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Idaho. No, I don't know. I would imagine it's similar to late summer, early fall. I mean,
right.
But that's just
an assumption.
Yes, it's an assumption.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So he gets there September 2018. And like I said, there were just some indications that he wasn't totally feeling the project, but he committed to it, so he went anyway. So the crew sets up their base operations in a small town near the filming site, and they have like accommodations at local lodges and or campgrounds. So the daily routine involved traveling to the remote filming location where this gold mine was. Often it required some of those off-road vehicles and some hiking to reach some of these spots. The workload was very heavy with early starts and late finishes, but that's all typical for this kind of show that they're shooting.
Like nothing he wouldn't have been used to already.
Right. Yes, I think so. So there were some reports that Terrence was just kind of feeling a little homesick and overwhelmed. And I'm assuming it was some of his friends who made these reports, because it had mentioned it when I was doing this research a couple of times.
How far into the trip was he feeling like this? Like really upon getting there, or they were...
Well, I guess technically you could say the first day or the day before the first day when he told his dad he didn't even want to go.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just important to keep saying that due to the conditions that this show was filming, like, it's not unusual for somebody maybe not to be having, like, the best time out there. Like, these are harsh conditions.
Right,
so
it's tricky.
So the night before he disappears, which would have been October 4th, is when the night before. So October 4th, he sends his dad a text message and tells his dad that he is going to be coming home early. And I watched this part of the interview, and Dr. Phil had said to the dad, like, did that send up any red flags for you? And he said, no, like, I was glad he was coming home. Like, if he didn't want to be there anymore, then I was happy to have him come home. Like, the man, both the parents are very sweet.
Yeah.
And so the dad just responded back with a message saying to him to bring him a shot glass, because I guess because Terrence was this world traveler, he would always bring his dad these shot glasses from, like, everywhere he went. And I did see on the interview that the dad had like basically like a china cabinet of all these shot glasses that his son brought with him from everywhere.
Did Terrence respond to the shot glass question?
I do not know. So anyway, it's just, he made it a statement to his dad that he was going to be coming home earlier than normal, but basically did not give any reason why and or details.
So no details as to how he was getting home?
No.
Okay.
So now we get to the day of the disappearance, which was October 5th, 2018. So this began like any other day on the set. The crew was filming in a particularly remote area, again in the Orogrande region, and they were focusing on this one specific abandoned gold mine. So this area had, and I feel like this is common for gold mines, which I know nothing about, but
Same.
When you think about it, like, they're not going to be found necessarily on a lot of flat land. I mean, when you're going to go mine, you're going into something to mine. You're not like on the prairie.
Right.
So, like,
good call.
It's hilly. There's a lot of terrain, like up and down elevation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it was just kind of like overcast skies, but no severe weather. So the day progresses, and it's reported that Terrence's behavior becomes increasingly erratic. So according to some accounts from the crew, he was just a little bit more subdued than usual, and he appeared more distracted than usual. But despite this, he continues filming and doing what he needs to do that's required at his job. So then we get to late afternoon, and this is when the very strange and unexpected occurrence happens. So witnesses said that Terrence, so there were a few different accounts of this, but I think that, as I told you, there were 11 other people there that were on the crew, but there was also one local woman who was basically kind of like, she was shuttling the crew back and forth. And I don't know if that meant like in shifts, like maybe some of the crew would, like if they were going for lunch, like she would shuttle them back to the town and then shuttle them all back up. But the point is, she wasn't part of the crew, but she was there as a local who was helping with this stuff.
And she was not one of the 12. That makes 13.
Right.
Or she was.
Okay. Yeah. So not counting Terrence and not counting her, there were 11 crew members.
Got it.
And then her. So he was speaking to her. He told her he needed to use the bathroom. Well, in this kind of location, that means going to pee in the woods. Like, there was no bathroom. So he tells her he has to use the bathroom. So he starts to move away from the group. And one of the executives, I guess, on location was in some type of vehicle. I don't know if it was a four-wheeler or just a normal car, but he was sitting in it, like reviewing something, and ended up looking over, and he saw that, so the area that Terrence went to was sort of on like an embankment. Like, it wasn't a cliff face like the Grand Canyon that just went straight down, but I mean, it was a very, very steep decline down if you continue to walk over it. And that's where he was headed to, I guess, go use the bathroom. So the executive producer was looking and saw that when he looked over, that Terrence had put down his like radio. I guess they had like walkie-talkie kind of things. And he put that down, and he didn't see Terrence anymore. So he got out of the car and kind of like jogged over to where he had last seen Terrence walking. And he got to the edge of this drop off, and he saw Terrence was already like 10 to 12 feet down this embankment, and he was like sprinting away from the group. And he described it when, I guess the dad did have a chance to talk to this man, and the man described it like, he said, I saw Terrence, he was like 10 feet down this hill already, and he was running towards the forest like a hare.
Oh my gosh.
And so I want to say him and one other crew member tried to chase after Terrence and started calling for him because they had no idea like why he was doing this. And this terrain was very hazardous, and it would have been something where even like an experienced outdoorsman, like the people we normally talk about, would have had trouble getting down this embankment as fast, like not falling down it, but getting down it.
Well, and having to get back up to join everybody again.
Well, that wasn't a problem. From what they're describing, he didn't ever plan on joining them again. So, like I said, they tried to follow him, and they said that he easily just got away from them. And by the time he got to the bottom, he moved so quickly that the forest just like swallowed him up. And within moments, Terrence had disappeared from sight, leaving the crew just like baffled, like what the hell just happened here? What are your thoughts?
I'm so confused by what would have caused this. And, how did you say he worded it to the dad? He was coming home or he was leaving? He did specifically say he was coming home.
Oh, he was coming home early.
Coming home early. I mean, this sounds, I was going to say calculated, like he had a plan in place. He's going to say he's going to the bathroom, ends up really just trying to get away from this show crew. But it's a show. It's your job. It's not like they were holding you hostage. It's not like, I assume he wasn't being hurt or held against his will or anything like that. Like, it sounds like a work environment, obviously in the middle of nowhere in Idaho, but just such bizarre behavior. And then I'm thinking, like, was he scared of something? Was he running because he was afraid? But afraid of what?
Well, and that's the thing. There's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of weird shit that comes to light after this.
Oh, shit.
In my opinion, anyway. So the crew, once Terrence disappears, alerts the local authorities, and they do put out an immediate search, it was like searched. So like the crew had searched for a little bit, and then they, like I said, informed the police.
Can I just stop you quickly?
Yeah.
Don't you find it fascinating? And I'm not at all saying they should not have been looking for him. So clearly something is wrong. Something happened. They should be trying to find him. But I think it's insane when you think of past cases that we've done and families are begging the authorities to look for their loved ones and start a search. This man willingly ran away from the group that he was with, and they got people willing to search right away.
Well, but I'm also wondering if that's what the difference was. These people actually saw the fact that this man, like all these other ones we talk about, they're all like, well, they're missing. We don't know where they went. Where these people literally are out in the middle of nowhere. They're not outdoorsmen. One of their coworkers starts like hightailing it down a very, very steep embankment and just runs into the woods, not at all prepared to be out there for any length of time. But I don't know. I mean, I do know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's purely the fact that this isn't a person who disappeared without witnesses. This is a person who seems to have disappeared in real time, like acting, because they could have thought he was having a mental health crisis or like, I don't know, who knows, but.
Well, right. And even his belongings, like the way that he went down and how treacherous that sounded down that embankment. I mean, he's not getting home anytime soon, I would imagine. Like,
no, I don't think so.
Right. So he's telling his family that he's coming home early, but by these actions so far, if he chose them, not to say that he didn't choose what he was doing, but basically if he was in the middle of a crisis or something, I mean, I just feel like this wasn't going to end well, I would think.
Well, that's correct. And he also specifically purposely left his radio behind because he was holding it until he decided to run.
Right.
Which was one of the reasons why the guy the original man said he even went to check on him because he thought it was odd that he saw his radio lying on the ground then.
Right.
So back to contacting the local authorities. So the search was apparently launched almost immediately. As night began to fall, the search was a little bit more complicated, obviously, by the lack of light and the fact that you're in this extreme rugged terrain. And despite the efforts of the crew and the local search and rescue teams, there was no trace of Terrence by the end of that day. Now, they did bring in helicopters and used them. They also used infrared cameras, which I think we talked about before.
For like the body temperature.
Body heat, yeah. Again, not found at all. Nothing was, picked up.
Now, riddle me this quickly. So say he goes and does this. He's then deceased. Will it not pick up any body warmth? I mean, initially there would still be warmth.
Right. I guess it depends on the length of time.
Like the timing. Yeah. But I feel like that would have been well, I guess not. Not if he died suddenly.
So now here is one of the things of note, in my opinion, that's like something doesn't sound right here. For our bingo sheet, they did bring in search dogs.
Okay. Thank you.
So they brought them to the shoot where they were doing this TV show. The search dogs picked up no scent of him ever being there at all. Like, not even running down the hill, but these dogs picked up 0 scent of him ever existing where this shoot was happening. So there's the first thing that is a little hinky.
I have the chills.
Chillworthy. There's number 2 on the bingo card.
Right.
In fact, police also found no DNA whatsoever that Terrence was ever in that location.
That doesn't make any sense.
I know. Now, does that mean that his radio didn't smell like him, that they didn't pull any DNA off the radio? I don't know. Through the interviews and stuff I was looking at, it didn't completely go into detail. It just made very clear that no evidence of him being in that location was found.
Even take the radio out of it, even equipment and different objects, I would think that he would be in contact with, touching, lifting, moving when they would arrive. I would think a lot would have to be done. That just doesn't even make sense.
So in one of the interviews with the dad, he specifically made mention that his son wasn't very athletic and was considered flat-footed. He even kind of said, like, he was making some type of statement like, I mean, for God's sake, we had to buy him like these special insoles for his feet because of like how flat-footed he was. And the reason he was making this particular thing known was the story that these people gave about how he so easily outran them in this dense wilderness and nobody was able to even keep up with him to see where he went. The father is like, he just doesn't buy that version of the story. Like, he was easy enough to sprint down this major embankment and outrun anybody else who... Because at the original time, the crew member was only 10 feet away from him. It was just in an elevation, so it probably looked further away. Another bizarre thing was... So the mom and dad eventually were flown out there. They are divorced, by the way.
Oh.
So not that necessarily affects the story, but I mean...
Makes things trickier.
Right, so that, they are not together. So, but they were both flown out there, and they only had the ability to speak with 3 of the 11 people there. So, and this was at the police station. So that's something that I'm thinking like, so you're in a remote area, there's only 11 people. This isn't a small town. This isn't a resort, where there's a bunch of people coming and going. There's less than 15 people, and you're not going to get to talk to each of those people just literally to say, did you see something? Now, I don't know if the police spoke. I'm assuming the police spoke to everyone, but it's just odd that they would let all of these people go without letting the parents kind of just... I don't know.
To make them available.
Well, right. Yes. To have a little bit of a better understanding of what they might have seen, like specifically.
And wouldn't you also want to talk to those parents as one of those people? Like the fact that these people hightailed it out of there. And dare I say, I might be wrong, but when you brought up about the dad being like, wait, what? He ran like that? Like he would never do something like that. He wasn't capable. It makes me suspicious of the crew. Did they do something to him?
Right. Well, I don't know, but that's certainly a concept.
I don't have a good feeling.
So to further make it weirder, one of the three people that the mother spoke to, and I don't know if it was the original one who saw, the radio, or if it was one of the other two people, but whoever this was, it sounded like it was one of the people who would have been above him in the hierarchy of like the way
management,
the job was set up. But she said that this crew member decided to make it a point to focus on the fact that he basically said to her, Terrence came very highly recommended, and that he was very disappointed with how his like job performance was. Like, he was shocked that he came so highly recommended because basically he did a shitty job, instead of focusing on the fact that this
woman's son is missing.
Right. This guy sprinted off apparently into the woods. We're focusing on the fact that, like, hey, he kind of sucked.
He's now a missing person. This poor woman just got there. Her son is missing. And we're not in second grade with our parents at the meeting with the teacher to review the report card. What the hell do you want this woman to do about it? And what do you honestly want Terrence to do about it at this point? What a time to bring that up at all. Like, go to hell, dude.
I could only imagine what those meetings were like with your teachers and mom.
All I ever got in trouble for was talking too much.
Get out of here. Shocking. And from the interviews that I saw with a bunch of his coworkers, again, not the people he was with that specific job, what's it called? I was going to say job duty, job assignment, but like people he's worked with in the past, they all said he was very, like I told you in the beginning, he was very on top of his job. He understood how to do things. He was very like proactive. So
glowing reputation.
Right. So it's odd not only that this man decides to focus on his bad job performance while he's missing, but it just sounds so uncharacteristic of him to begin with.
Agreed.
And then we have one of the last details that is extremely strange as well. So after all this initial investigation happened and whatever and stuff, the dad is the one that ends up with Terrence's suitcase that he took on the trip. So I don't know how long it took, but the father eventually unpacked the suitcase. And, I don't know, like I said, I don't know the timeline, whether it was a few weeks because he, it was like a painful thing, or maybe he did it right away because it was fresh and they were looking for him or whatever. But either way, he did eventually unpack this suitcase. And at first he said he didn't notice this, but as he continued to unpack it, it was just becoming blatantly obvious that the suitcase was filled with nothing but clean folded clothing. Even the underwear and socks were still folded and clean. And he said the only dirty thing in the entire suitcase was a pair of muddy shoes that had been wrapped up in a plastic bag. And then he said, like, okay, so there were these muddy shoes, but everything else was clean. So what, did he not change in 4 days? Because he would have been on that when when Terrence went missing, that was supposed to be day 4 that he had been there. So he didn't change his outfit at all, including underwear and socks, for 4 days.
When was the text message that Terrence sent his dad?
It would have been 5 days before he... No, I guess not. I was going to say he sent the text message the day before he disappeared. So that would have been on day 3.
But this makes me think he did not go missing when they're claiming he went missing. This makes me think he went missing very early on in the trip. This whole story about the cliff and the putting the radio down and the day of that happening, I feel like that's not true.
Well, right. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me also. So was he even the one that sent the text message?
Oh, good call. I didn't think
know.
of that. Oh, I didn't think of that.
Because it's like, is there a better way to make it seem like somebody's still bebopping around if they're sending a text message to a family member saying, hey, I'm going to come home early, but leaving it vague? I mean,
no details, and then makes this whole thing even more of a mystery. Like, well, he texted he was coming home early. The whole thing is uncharacteristic, but something seems off with this crew.
Oh, I
don't
agree.
trust them at all.
So, saying all of that, we're going to enter in now to the theories and speculation. So before I go into that, do you have any thoughts on what is your theory on I mean, do you think it was foul play by the crew?
Yes, I think they killed him.
All right.
I think that story of him running is bullshit. I don't think that even happened at all. I think even if you think about it, the reason it makes no sense is because it makes no sense. Because
well said.
There's no logic in that whatsoever. The only thing I was thinking with him running suddenly like that and away from them, I'm thinking, well, maybe he was hallucinating. Maybe he saw something. He was, running from that, or he heard something. But if that was going on and that was something that he was experiencing, you would think that would be something that would have made it difficult for him with work. If that was a struggle of his, I don't think professionally he would have been doing as well as he was doing in that field for so long and built the reputation for himself. So if there was no history of that having happened, all of a sudden he's just running away from people and he's very paranoid and I don't believe these people, and I don't understand what exactly happened that they all of a sudden decided that they were going to go after him and target him like this and kill him.
Right. Well, I mean, we don't know if they actually killed him.
Well,
but because I'm thinking, well, what if an accident happened due to their like lack of due diligence or something? Like he fell into the mine and because it wasn't safe, or they didn't, whatever, and they were trying to cover. I mean, who knows? Obviously, all of this is speculation. But the other thing was, did he run away at that specific time because somebody had threatened him? And I mean, who knows? They're out in a very remote area. So if somebody is really threatening you, and then maybe you're like, well, this might be my only chance to get away, and you sprint away when you are quote unquote going to the bathroom because you want to make sure you get away safely. I have no idea, but
right. And even that, I mean, he had no hope of really getting anywhere safely. He had no vehicle. They're in this remote location.
Well, hold that thought. He did not have a vehicle. That is true. But one of the things that was made mentioned was that, and this goes more along the lines of, was this planned by him to leave? Which is, at the bottom of that embankment was a road that he would have had to cross to, I guess, get further into the forest. And so some people were speculating that if he decided he was the one that wanted to leave the area in this way, did he arrange for someone to pick him up because he had to run across this road? So I don't believe that to be the case, but I mean, I know I described it as a very desolate area, and I mean it is, but there was a road. I don't think it was a paved road, but I think it was some type of access point that he did have to run across to continue on his way if he did actually leave and go the direction that they're claiming he went.
But again, who's traveling on this road? I don't think anybody. Not many people. If it's I mean,
but I'm saying if he planned it, that's my only thing.
To have someone lined up already.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Not by happenstance.
No.
So
here are the biggest theories, I guess, of what happened. So the first one is mental health crisis. One of the most prevalent theories is that Terrence may have just been experiencing a mental health crisis in the moments leading up to this disappearance. This theory is particularly supported by the accounts of some of the colleagues and his family members who noted that he had been showing signs of distress and fatigue and just an overwhelming desire to return home. And like we talked about, the high pressure environment of this film stuff, I guess that could start to wear you down. And if you did have an underlying mental condition, that could probably spike some of those issues when you're applying all that pressure of what your job is. The only and when they're talking about the mental health part of it, they're like, well, did he have some type of panic attack? Which, I mean, as somebody who has them, I can't say I've ever run into the wilderness from it, but everybody does handle it differently.
True.
People were saying was he up there, had this overwhelming sense of panic, and basically fight or flight kicked in, and he chose flight, and he just took off
to the point that no one could then find him.
I know. It's just a theory, baby. It's not my theory.
I know.
So, and like you said, I mean, yeah, it could explain the suddenness of his erratic behavior, but it doesn't explain the fact that he's just now gone into thin air.
Right.
So then the second one, which I briefly mentioned, is that, did he choose to voluntarily disappear? Which, of course, for the bingo card is our favorite one. He just wanted to start again.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to start again.
Fresh beginning.
Right.
And what a way to begin that.
I'd love to get the numbers on how many people actually do, quote unquote, just start again. I guess we wouldn't know that because they started again.
Absolutely. Nobody knows.
Right. But I mean, it's always big on the speculation, list. But anyway, and the only reason that this is a theory is, like I said, because of the fact that if he wasn't intending on disappearing like dangerously into the forest, he did have to cross a road. So it's not as if he necessarily would have so easily gotten lost, because he had to literally cross a road, and or, as I said, he could have had somebody waiting to pick him up. So
even that, though, if you would think about it, if they picked him up and then eventually, I assume, made their way back into town, used highways, I feel like surveillance would have picked him up somewhere. Maybe not, or there would have been a sighting. I don't know. I just feel like the fact that, though, the dogs couldn't pick up a scent is odd to me.
Of course.
Or at all. I mean,
dogs always know, baby.
Though. Yeah, they do always know. You're correct. You are correct.
Thank you. What do you have to say over there? It
just dawned on me, though. What if he legit never was there? Like, this
that
whole...
just dawned on you? You don't need lightning to strike you.
It's just like this suitcase thing, and how I said that I feel like that they probably killed him early on. Your theory...
Or there was an accident.
So I was just going to say...
I don't want them hunting us down.
Right.
And if anybody is listening, she's the one saying killed.
Your theory about the accident and that they, panicked and that something went wrong... Which, if that's the case, too, and he's down in this gold mine or somewhere else, that would make sense why there's no trace of him at that location where they claim he went running from.
Right.
But yeah, I'm thinking, well, that must be some scientific error that the dogs aren't picking up his scent and there's no DNA. But
right.
No, it's because he freaking never even was there in the first place.
Well, and even when I was thinking about the accident thing, I'm thinking, like, does that also... say something did happen to him very early on, like day one, and it was covered up. Like, does that also make sense then why instead of reporting to his family how good of a job he was doing, does that make sense to tell them how shitty of a job he was doing, so that it's kind of like, yeah, now he just abandoned the job altogether.
Like it goes along with that narrative.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
good call.
I don't know.
They're scoundrels.
Well,
Sorry.
They might be. But speaking of the gold mine, when I was listening to the sheriff talk, he did bring up that one of the reasons potentially they're saying that his body might never have been found was because in areas that used to be booming with gold mines, not only are the mine entrances there, but there are also different things called air shafts that are kind of littered among the forest, but like by that point they're overgrown with brush and stuff, but it's basically like a shaft that would just drop you pretty far down. So if he was running and happened to fall into one of those, like he would, still doesn't explain the dog thing. But, the suitcase thing,
yes.
If we're going off of what the crew had said. But the point just basically being like, it's not completely crazy if they had helicopters and infrared lights or cameras, that if he happened to fall, even say 20 feet into a hole, then he's not going to be found, unless you happen to know which hole he fell into and where it is.
Exactly. And even his survival... falling, I mean, that kind of a drop, he would never have survived it. So you're also not talking about someone who's yelling for help.
Right.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the next one, which was his death an accident? Now, they're not necessarily saying, was it an accident and was it covered up? But did he just happen to, he took off for whatever reason, and then he did fall into one of these things, and it was just like an accidental disappearance where he might not have meant. Maybe he was just trying to get away from something and ended up falling into one of these like air shafts, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then we've got foul play. So some, including you,
yes,
have speculated that foul play might have been involved, and theory is based on the possibility that somebody else, whether it was from within the crew or an external party, might have had a motive to harm him. Although no direct evidence has ever been found that actually supports this theory, but it's just the fact that his behavior was very unusual. Like, he was a great worker who knew what he was doing. He wasn't known for just randomly running off into the woods, and from what it sounds like, his previous experience, he could have run off into other woods at other times and decided not to.
Right.
The idea that he wanted to, quote unquote, start again, he was very close with his family. His parents were extremely distraught. So it doesn't sound, again, like a person who basically has like no ties to his old life and just wants to, you know, start over.
Right.
So that's, I don't know. That's just, you know, I mean, people are talking about that, but at the same time, it's like nothing was ever brought to light that would be like, oh, okay, you know, it was Charlie.
Well, the police didn't seem to dig very deep into Charlie, Bob, and Lenny, who were on this crew.
Well, true. The last one, which of course, like this one is, as always, it's always out there, wildlife. Okay, so like,
I don't think for this.
No, I don't think so either, but whatever. So yeah, I mean, those are basically the theories that seem to be floating around out there the most.
I don't think the police dove nearly as deep as they should have on the staff, on the crew, whatever you call them. I feel like we heard nothing about that, their names, questioning them. Did they have any suspects? It's just like, because they said he ran, that must have been what happened. And then we're not going to look at anyone as a suspect.
Well, the one thing, though, that I feel like sort of doesn't support that big theory of like this is a big cover up is literally just that would have to mean that that entire crew was in on it. Like, everybody there decided that they would rather make up this story than say what really happened. And if you, like, let's pretend, for example, that he did fall into one of those mine shafts. It's like, so what, the guy on camera B thinks that that's his responsibility so much that he's going to get in so much trouble that he's not going to come clean. Like, this happened. Like, I can understand the people in charge, quote unquote, maybe there were like 2 or 3 people in charge, and they were like, oh my God, we can't, like, we should have never let this happen. Like, we were so, whatever, so irresponsible. But you're telling me everybody, like the snack guy, I don't know if there was a snack guy, but you know what I mean? Like, that would have to be a pretty well oiled machine to be like, we are keeping every one of you 11 people silent, including the chick from down the street. So that's my only thing.
We didn't hear from her, though. Maybe she's the one saying something's up with this group. Something is funny.
I don't know.
Something's not quite right. And they silenced her. They snuffed her out.
Well, I don't know.
Not literally, figuratively snuffed her out.
So just to sort of wrap this up in terms of, like, that was obviously all the day of the disappearance, what potentially could have happened to him. From the parents' point of view, they were obviously immediately alarmed. They thought that this is extremely, you know, unlike him. So Terrence Woods and Valerie Woods, which was his mother, they were notified, and then they were shocked. Like, I remember in the interview when the person had called his dad just kept saying, like, I don't even understand what you're saying. What do you mean he just ran away? Like,
because it's not logical. It's very hard to wrap your head around it. And that's what I mean. Like, it doesn't even sound believable. It sounds so far-fetched. It's like that's the best these people could come up with is their story.
Right. I know. It's very, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
The family is still focused on the case. They are still advocating for the case. You know, they still are trying to find updates from the police in Idaho. And there was there's 2 other things, really. So the first one is that family was very critical, which you are as well, as am I, of the investigators' early dismissal of foul play as a big possibility.
Yeah.
So while authorities have leaned towards theories involving accidental death or mental health crisis, much more, the Woods family has consistently argued that all possibilities, including foul play, should be thoroughly explored. And watching that Dr. Phil episode, both those parents were definitely acting like something was not right in terms of with the film crew, even in terms of with like the sheriff department and stuff, and Dr. Phil did have one of the sheriffs on.
Ooh.
And the sheriff, he was the one who was explaining about like the air pockets and stuff,
right,
or the air shafts.
Yeah,
and
nice convenient story.
I'm just saying.
Wow.
He said what he said.
Right.
And it was just like the Dr. Phil questioned him on, didn't you find it odd, though, that when they met with the parents, that the first thing that they were complaining about was that he had a poor work performance? And the sheriff denied ever hearing that in the interview. I'm assuming the interview wasn't taped or whatever.
Of course not.
But
all very convenient.
I mean, it wasn't like he was like, oh my God, they would have never said that. He was just like, I just don't remember them saying it. So,
yeah. Sounds like somebody lying on the stand. I don't recall. I don't recall. Very convenient.
And it sounds as though the family, like I said, is still very engaged, because not only was this on Dr. Phil, now this was a few years ago, but I think there have been some very recent interviews with the parents and stuff. So I think that they're still like very high on the, advocacy and attention to this case, like, train.
Yeah.
And the only other thing, and I don't have any details on this before you ask, just because this case was pretty involved, so like I just didn't continue on with this part of it, but it's very interesting, and it could be like a bonus follow-up thing.
Right.
But something that was particularly fascinating was the same day, about 40 miles away in the same type of area, like National Park, shocker, National Park-esque.
Ding, ding, ding.
A woman went missing the exact same day who was like, she wasn't a park ranger, but she was somebody who was out in the park doing some type of job, I want to say. And I think she might have been like in her maybe 50s. And, so it was just like, it looks like it's completely unrelated, but at the same time, she disappears. And still to this day, she also is gone without a trace. They never found her. They never found him.
Well, she doesn't have a film crew saying that she started sprinting and doing relay races down a cliff.
Well, that's true, but I also don't know what or who reported what she did. But I'm assuming she did not run off a cliff as well, but we don't know.
Right.
So that is pretty much the very weird story about Terrence Woods Jr.
This is deeply disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel terrible for his family, his poor parents. I think the police department should be ashamed, and they did a terrible job. Talk about poor performance. It's the police department. And I am extremely skeptical of this crew.
Well, I think that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's just,
I don't trust them. I don't trust what they're reporting, and they can say whatever the hell they want. I think you bring up a very good point with how many of them there are, and that they're all going to join in on the story together. Because I was thinking, well, maybe they weren't, whatever happened, maybe every member of the crew wasn't physically there to see it or be aware of it. But like what you said, what their story was with what they reported to the police would have involved all of them. They would have, if he had already gone missing several days before, then the rest of the crew who maybe hadn't been involved in it but was there by day 4 or 5 of this supposed missing date, they would have still had to basically co-sign on this story of him running. So yeah, I agree that definitely makes this more muddled, but
I mean, it sounds like it would make one hell of a fiction book.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that typical twists and turns of like, how did we end up here? But in real life, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would take a lot. Like that would be like the perfect storm to get everybody in on it.
Yeah.
So.
And that no one faltered on it. But also I'm thinking, how hard did the police press? Like maybe this was really easy to pull off because they weren't even looking at them as suspects.
Something just popped into my head that I forgot to mention. I mean, not that it impacts the strangeness. It just makes it more strange. But I do remember it was concluded that one of the crew members needed to undergo therapy from that day. And that's all. Yeah, that's all that they said. I think that was on the Dr. Phil show.
Because they couldn't live with their guilt.
Well, people were like, what did they see that made them...
Well, that's their mistake, thinking that an event happened that particular day, as they allege,
I'm
which
just
it
saying,
didn't.
right. But yes, somebody did have to actually... I think it was like a younger person have to undergo therapy, and I know that's like such a shitty way to introduce that because I don't have any of the details, but I just... Something you said reminded me about that, so...
Something is just not right about this group and what they alleged, and this story I think sounds so weak and strange. I also think if he was having a mental health emergency and that is what caused this erratic behavior to suddenly happen, wouldn't the family have been like, you know what, there was a bit of a history, or like, yes, something did happen before, we had seen instances of this or something. Mm-hmm. Give me a break. I think they're liars.
All right. All righty.
Yeah.
I know you don't have any closing thoughts for the chillers.
I never do.
You never do, but you want me to ask.
Yes. Please keep asking.
Okay.
You never know.
So I don't really either. I mean, if, like I said, I might do a little update on our next episode of that woman, because I don't think there was like a whole bunch to go into, but just kind of to wrap that part up, she deserves a name at least.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea.
You do have something to say now?
I do. I wanted to say it earlier and I completely forgot about it. I wanted to thank all of our followers and inform everyone that we are now over 200 followers.
Yes,
and that
okay.
is very exciting.
She means on Instagram, by the way, everyone.
Sorry. Thank you. And we're so grateful to all of you. And thank you for continuously listening to us and bearing with us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And we did get a little bit of listener engagement.
Yes,
which
we
I
did.
was super excited about. So
you asked for it, you got it.
Right.
Yep.
And please give us more. We
Yes.
highly enjoyed just somebody who isn't somebody who already knows us reaching out in this big wide world.
Right. Commenting, giving their thoughts.
Drop us a line.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I hope David Archuleta listens to this. And, as always,
stay safe
and stay chill.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. You've just listened to Chillworthy. Thank you for joining us on this latest episode. While we strive to keep our discussions engaging and lighthearted, we also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the real lives and events that are at the heart of these stories.
We try to approach each topic with a sense of curiosity and respect, fully aware of the impact these events have had on the individuals and their loved ones. Our goal is to honor their memories by keeping their stories alive and shedding light on the mysteries that surround them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, and don't forget to join us on the next episode of Chillworthy.